What's something a teacher did that made you absolutely hate them? I've suffered from mental illness the majority of my life, and it was heavily affecting my life at school. I was super behind at math and couldn't understand anything. My mom hired a tutor, and within 3 months I had caught up to where we were at school. I had my notebook from my sessions with my tutor on the desk to look back if I couldn't remember something, not for a test or anything. My math teacher stopped in the middle of explaining something when she saw me check my notebook, grabbed it from my desk, looked into it, and then slammed it down in front of me. She got all up in my face and said you should never bring another teacher's notes to my class, like I did something really bad. Ended up stopping with tutoring and dozing off during her classes, lost all motivation to keep up after that and hated her. I'm guessing this teacher had really low confidence and thought that you bringing other notes in was saying she was not good enough at teaching, when in reality, sometimes you just need to hear someone explain something in a different way and it can make perfect sense. Keyboarding typing class. Got mad and refused us access to the computers for the rest of the semester. All but 2 or 3 of us straight up quit going or checking in. Since it was my last class I just left and went to work early. Last week or 2 before the end of the semester we all got called into the office separately and questioned about it. She was let go. Apparently she was supposed to actually keep track of whether or not we were there. You know, like a teacher. She was let go. I was drawing in my notebook. I had finished all my classwork. Teacher was not lecturing. Teacher gets in a huff. I finished my work early, grabs my notebook, and says loudly to the class, "Oh how I love. He is such a nice and dreamy teacher. This is why I love biology class." Put my notebook on my desk and walked away with a grin. I was mortified. I'm a guy BTW. My music teacher from middle school was always condescending and arrogant to us. She acted like we are some idiots who should be feel blessed she's even talking to us. One of my professors in college was like that as well. Said often make jokes that were much more like provocations and insulting. I won't say hate, but here's one I strongly disliked. We had a high school science teacher who played solitaire on her computer every single day. She never taught anything. When I got to college, I was so underprepared I cried almost every day. It was awful. Years later, she friended me on FB. I didn't think much about it because it's a small town and I'm friends with a lot of my old teachers. She never liked anything or interacted with me at all until the day I posted something about dropping out of law school. That post she liked. It was almost as if she purposely wanted me to fail. I had a teacher in high school and somehow we got onto the topic of ringworm and she goes on about how yeah, that's a bad parasite to get. I was a quiet kid and very rarely spoke up, but this was one of those times. Actually, ringworm is a fungus, kind of like athlete's foot. She responds with, "Oh no, it's a parasite. My brother used to wrestle and he got it a lot." I didn't like that response since I currently wrestled and had it before, along with maybe 30% of the team at one point or another. I've had it before. The medication is the same as for athlete's foot. The conversation debate ended with, "Oh, well, agree to disagree then." And then we got back on topic. After class she held me, after for a minute, to tell me not to talk back to her again. I figured it was best not to speak up much anymore for the rest of the year. Prof for a class on motivation in a Japanese university basically started going on a tangent of his own theory, made us read and buy his books, claimed the idea of positive psychology came after his own theory, and best of all, when any of us argued with him, he'd just go argue that he has 3 doctor's degree and thus he's smarter wiser than us. Hated that prof, but hey, thanks for the easy grade. All we had to do was kiss up to his ego to get a good mark. I asked a teacher a question, and I followed the directions. Later I found out I misheard. Got in a lot of trouble because they just assumed I was lying. I was a 2nd grade kid. As a teacher now, I can't imagine why their first thought was this child is a liar when I had no history of causing problems or doing anything wrong. I cut a bruise off the banana I was eating at lunch and threw it in the bushes. This teacher saw it and was so upset. He was like, "Would you do that at home?" I said yes, I throw food scraps in the garden. He made me search for it to put it in the bin out of principle I guess. I told him I'm not going to find a dollar coin sized piece of banana in the bushes. I just didn't do it and said I did. It seemed more important to him than me actually doing it. Ridiculous. This happened in first period today. Sometimes this teacher keeps us for a few seconds after the bell to finish up what we were doing, writing a sentence, packing up, etc. By the way, there are 2 bells between each class, one at the end of a class and then another 3 minutes later to let everyone know if they're late. This teacher always tells us to sit or stand at our seats before we can leave. Today, she didn't let us out until 2 minutes after the first bell rang. I checked the time when I left the room. Me and a few others have to go to the other side of the school for our next class and we were about a minute late today. The teacher refused to give us passes for being late. I was curious the next class and decided to look up if it was okay for teachers to do that. Turns out the teachers in my school district could get fired for that. Bonus quick story: my 6th grade English teacher failed me on an essay because I wrote in first person. I only used I 3 or 4 times in 2 pages and she didn't even tell us we weren't supposed to use first person. My mother called me right before a test to tell me my grandmother was going to pass away and to come to the home to say goodbye. Ran to the teacher to explain why I had to take the test another time. She absolutely refused because she didn't believe me. I offered to call my mom so she could confirm, but she said she had to start the test for the people who actually care about their education. I never paid attention in class, but always got good grades. Obviously I left to go say goodbye to my grandmother. Teacher failed me not just for the test, but for the entire year. This isn't much, but one time, my social studies teacher was taking to the class and then just decides to sit on my desk in front of me. I felt so uncomfortable, plus I've heard rumors of him being touchy, but I couldn't just tell him. So I sat there, making no eye contact, until he stopped. Worst 5 minutes of my life. I don't hate the teacher, but she messed up real bad. First day of class, since the government changed the curriculum, I designed a perfect grading system. It has 0 errors and works perfectly. She ended up saying this: for definitely 5+ time first grading comes, she had to make meeting because of all the people that had incomplete mistyped grades. She still says it's great. My football coach, who was also my history teacher, for some reason decided to tell me during class I should try out for something besides receiver cause I was too short. Didn't try to keep it quiet or anything, and I get anxiety really bad, so it wasn't a very fun experience in class. When I was in school I was a pretty average kid. Kept to myself mostly and did the best I could, which wasn't always the best, but I still tried my best always. Sophomore year of high school I get switched to a different English class halfway through the year. For some reason this teacher did not like me. I don't know what I did, but he just didn't like me. One day he was giving this speech about a project or something, and he said something along the lines of, "Those of you who tend to disappoint better give it your all." When he said that, he looked and stared right at me, and it filled me with a rage that still makes me mad to this day, almost 10 years later. One thing that particularly irks me is when a professor will value their own ideology more than challenging their students intellectually. Engaging with students and challenging their own ideas, asking them to clarify, along with encouraging them to think individually, are things I highly value, especially since I'm interested in being a part of academia. However, when a professor will not listen to other points of view or won't play devil's advocate, you lessen the ability of your students to think in a myriad of perspectives. Never allow one's perspective to influence your teaching. Education is not about you, it is about your students. My science teacher addressed my class as my happy papas. I hated it. Also, whenever you approached her to ask to go to the bathroom or something, she said, "What's up, ducky?" It was just really annoying because she seemed more childish than the 15-year-old boys in her class. My high school English teacher failed me, but gave students who actually did way worse than me good scores. When I went up to him, he didn't even know my name, and it was obvious that he failed me because he thought I was dumb and didn't even read my paper. Oh, when I was 8, my family moved to Europe, and I had to get into an international school that spoke English. For this I had to read out loud from a book for them. I'm a native English speaker, but because I speak with an Australian accent and not a British one, they said my English wasn't good enough. To add insult to injury, we moved back to Australia after a year, and all through my schooling in Australia, my English skills have always been off the charts good. Just my verbal skills are average, and this might actually be because of undiagnosed Asperger's. My 8th grade social studies teacher made me get up and go with the special ed students to get my test read to me. I told her that I don't need help. She forced me to go. I talked to the special ed teacher and he understood and let me take the test out in the hall by myself. I got 100 and she never made me leave again because he talked to her about it. Professor tried to preach to the class a delineation between noise and white noise, being that white noise has its name because of racial differences, in that white is better than black or something, so that's why it was used to specify for noise people find more appealing. Handed in my course elk for draft feedback and my teacher absolutely slated the work. Not one positive comment. She must have been having a bad night or something, because she tore it apart and it really got me down. She was so nice in class previously too. My teacher had a pet chameleon in the class. I was an aspiring veterinarian and recognized the chameleon was shedding, so I spritzed it with water as humidity helps it shed. I was banned from looking straight the chameleon for the rest of the year from then on. I'm now no vet. My high school teacher kept failing me on everything because I used to have long hair and wear Iron Maiden t-shirts. When my mom went to talk to her, my teacher said she wouldn't even talk to my mom because I was clearly a Satanist. Lol, barely passed high school cause of that.